Okay, so let's dive right in. We usually read the Quran as a book of stories, laws, history. But what if it's something more? What if, hidden inside its verses, there's actually a blueprint, a real, functional operating system for consciousness itself? Today, we're going to map out that very system.
So let's start with a puzzle. Picture this, a massive, powerful kingdom run by a legendary king. Now, imagine that king dies, but his rule just keeps going. His authority is still there, his servants are working away, and they have absolutely no idea the person in charge is gone. I mean, how is that even possible?
Well, this isn't from some fantasy novel. It's right out of the Quran, describing the death of King Sulaymān, or Solomon. He died standing up, just leaning on his staff, and for who knows how long, the powerful forces under his command, the jinn, kept on working, purely out of fear. It was only when a tiny bug gnawed through his staff and his body finally fell over that the whole illusion just shattered. Now, this bizarre event isn't just a cool story. It's a key.
Yeah, this story of the king who stood, even in death, it reveals a really fascinating truth about how power actually works. It's the very first piece of the operational code we're looking at, and it points to a fundamental law about authority.
And this is the law it illustrates so brilliantly. Power that runs on perception, on fear, on just the outward appearance of control, can keep its grip long after the real life force behind it is totally gone. It's like a ghost system, running on the memory of control. But what part of us runs this kind of system?
The Quran calls this engine the Nafs, what we might translate as the self, or the ego. This is that part of our consciousness that wants to build and command and control things. It can create entire kingdoms and master hidden forces. But, as Sulaymān's story warns us, its power is built on a foundation that is absolutely destined to crumble. It's powerful, for sure, but it is not the whole story.
So the nafs is just one layer. The Quran actually maps out a much bigger, three-part system. This isn't just about one king's power. It's a blueprint for the flow of all authority, from its purest source all the way to its ultimate balanced state.
So here it is, the system in its simplest form. It flows from Rūḥ, the spirit, down into the Nafs, the self, and is then ultimately resolved and corrected by ilm, which is pure knowledge. And listen, this isn't a narrative, it's an operational law. It describes how consciousness actually functions.
The whole system starts with Rūḥ, or spirit. Just imagine a state of consciousness that's perfectly aligned, instantly obedient, and completely weightless because there's zero ego creating friction. Its authority comes from pure resonance, not from force.
And the system's final destination, its ultimate failsafe, is ilm, or pure knowledge. This isn't an authority that uses fear or control. No, its power comes from pure clarity and truth. It doesn't need to command anything. It simply restores balance by revealing what is.
Okay, so I know this might seem a little abstract, right? But the Quran actually demonstrates this system through the different functions of its prophets. They aren't just historical figures here. They are living embodiments of these layers of consciousness and authority.
Let's just compare the first two layers, represented by a father and son. Dāwūd, or David, embodies Rūḥ. His authority is spiritual. His son, Sulaymān, embodies the Nafs. His authority is all about material command over a complex, powerful, and kind of dangerous world. See the shift? It moves from pure resonance to complex control. The Qur'an tells us that with Dāwūd, the mountains and even the birds would glorify God alongside him. And the birds are a huge symbol here. They represent pure, weightless obedience, moving by command without any ego getting in the way. Dāwūd's power wasn't forced, it was a state of perfect alignment. That's Rūḥ.
Sulaymān's authority, on the other hand, was over the wind, all matter, and the jinn. And the jinn symbolize all the hidden, impulsive, and complex forces of the world and of the self. So his rule was the absolute peak of the Nafs, a masterful governance of immense power, but a power that, as we saw, is ultimately tethered to an illusion.
So, what happens when that ego-based, nafs-driven authority finally reaches its expiration date? Well, the system has a protocol for this. It's actually designed to collapse, to expire. Also, it can reveal a much deeper truth.
This timeline really shows the inevitable life cycle of ego-based power. It hits its peak with Sulaymān's total control, but his death marks its expiration. And this creates a really dangerous vacuum, a period the Quran calls Iblīs's respite. This is a time of confusion, where the memory of power gets mistaken for the real thing. This is the world of the fallen staff, where servants keep working for a king who isn't even there anymore.
But the system doesn't just end in confusion. The collapse of the nafs actually triggers the final phase, the restoration of balance. And this isn't done with more power or more control, but with something else entirely.
This is the function of ʿīsā, or Jesus. He represents that third layer, ilm. And his purpose isn't kingship or material control. His function is correction. He restores balance through pure, incorruptible knowledge. And this is the critical reason his function directly counters that of Iblīs. Think about it. Both operate outside the complex ego structure of the nafs, but they are polar opposites. ʿīsā submits to divine truth, while Iblīs is literally defined by his rebellion against it.
So how is this system of pure knowledge anchored? Right? How is it kept from being corrupted? Well, the Qur'an gives a very direct, very powerful command. It's delivered to the prophet Yaḥyā, or John the Baptist. "O Yaḥyā, take the book with strength." Okay, this is the linchpin. The name Yaḥyā literally means life. The book represents ilm, or knowledge. So when life itself holds on to incorruptible knowledge with strength, you get a form of authority that simply cannot be subverted. It completely bypasses the potential corruption of the nafs. It anchors the entire system in pure truth.
So now we can put it all together. This entire process can be boiled down into a final, really elegant equation, the operational law of consciousness we've been unpacking this whole time. First, you have the law of Rūḥ, authority that has no ego, the state we saw with Dāwūd and the birds that naturally leads to peace and harmony. It's just a state of pure alignment.
Second, the law of nafs, power that has an ego. The kingdom of Sulaymān, well, that leads to a delay. It can achieve incredible things, sure, but it's ultimately temporary. It's an illusion that just postpones the recognition of the ultimate truth.
And finally, the law of ilm, knowledge without any ego, represented by ʿīsā and anchored by Yaḥyā, that leads to a return to balance. This is the system's ultimate corrective function, restoring order not with power, but with pure truth.
Rūḥ, Nafs, ilm, spirit, self, knowledge. So you see, this isn't just some ancient story. It's presented as a living, breathing, operational law of consciousness. And so the final question really isn't about prophets and kings from the past. It's about you, right here, right now. Which layer are you operating from?